Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings back in my conference office here in St. Louis after a wonderful 2 weeks of vacation. As some of you know, my husband and I traveled throughout Germany and Poland as we were visiting with families of the exchange students that we have had in the past and exchange students that we will be hosting this fall. I have to share with you, especially in light of the events that happened after our return, that one of the things that I brought with me as I let go of email and Facebook and technology and made my way to Germany and Poland was this awareness of privilege. We've been talking a lot about it in our denomination, and I am grateful for a denomination that sits with very important, difficult, uncomfortable conversations. For me, I sat with it on a personal level, not necessarily a political or theological, but as I got there, what does it mean for me to be in a place of privilege? Especially the simple fact that I was traveling to Europe, to Germany, to Poland, that I was traveling at all, is a point of privilege. For a long time in my life, I have shied away from talking about or acknowledging privilege, because how does one do that? Yes, I have privilege. Yes, this is what I have. I don't want to sound or seem pretentious. I want to be aware and I want to work for justice and equality. And so I sat with that and let go of my guilt and my shame and simply sat with what is privilege. For me, in some places, I live in privilege. I had the opportunity of having a very good education. I had the opportunity of having a family system where I knew and know that I always have a safety net. Privilege. I have the opportunity where when I walk into a store, I am not followed. When I drive in my car, I am not stopped. Privilege. But what do I do with that? And as I traveled around Germany, listening to the culture and the beauty of this place and this heritage that is much deeper and longer than our own in America, but also listening to the history, the scarred and painful, wounded history, where privilege and power butts up with minority and powerlessness, and what happened in those places that we know very well, and what happened in those places that we are the ancestors and the inheritors of those kind of places as our evangelical brothers and sisters, some of them moving to America because they wanted religious freedom to be able to worship in the way that they felt in a pious way that they were called to do. So one day I was in Northwest Germany, and my husband and the others had gone in other places to tour museums and to do some things, and I was not really feeling it. And so I found this cathedral, Catholic cathedral in the town square, and I decided that I needed some reflection time. And so I sat in the cathedral in the silence and sat with this awareness of privilege. And what came to me in this very privileged place of a cathedral was that Jesus was a person of privilege, that he lived in a time, in a space, in a religion where he was the majority, where he had been given rights and privileges, not of his own doing or choosing, but rights and privileges that he had inherited, that came because of his role as rabbi and teacher. And so in this cathedral in Germany, where I didn't know any German, I began to sit with So what does this look like for Jesus? So Jesus was a person of privilege. What did he do with that privilege? And how does that shape and inform us when we have those moments of privilege as well? And I came up with three points of awareness of Jesus' privilege. One is that in his places of privilege, whether that was in the synagogue, whether that was as a teacher, whether that was as a Jewish male, in his places of privilege, he often gave away his power. He shared it. He made sure that those who were powerless, who were underprivileged or had no privilege in that culture and society, that they were included. He did that by eating with the people nobody wanted to be around. He did that by worshiping and healing people that were deemed unclean, unworthy, ungodly. He did that by even in the ways that he perhaps made mistakes, such as the woman who tugged on his clothing, and even when he got a little testy in his privilege, she let him know that his privilege and power was that to share, to give away. When we are in places of privilege, we are called to give it away. But Jesus also empowered in a way that protested the power. So he not only gave it away to the people who had no power, but he protested the fact that those who had privilege and power were keeping it for themselves. He protested actively and publicly, passionately, and even risking his very life, giving, if you will, his life. He protested the religious leaders. He protested the political and government leaders. He protested his disciples, who sometimes didn't quite get what this privilege and power was supposed to be about. When we are in places of privilege and power, ours is not only to give it away to those who have no power or are underprivileged in our society. Ours is to protest the systems of power in our culture, our society, our church, our denomination, our lives. But the third aspect of Jesus' privilege and power and what he did with it is that he had compassion. In last week's lectionary passage from the Gospel of Luke, the Good Samaritan story tells this very story of this man who was the underprivileged, who had no power, and he was the one who showed how we are to love God with all of our mind and with all our strength and our heart, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And at the very end of that passage, Jesus says to the lawyer, in summing up this parable, that this man was good because he had mercy. Another translation is compassion. For me, that understanding is that when we have those places of privilege and power, that we are to love in such a whole, full, just, equal way, that we don't belittle, we don't patronize, we don't look down, we don't look up, that we have compassion for one another. In the past week, with the violence and the brutal deaths of Alton Sterling and Philandro Castillo, but also in the brutal deaths at a peaceful protest in Dallas of 5 police officers, and the shattering of what this looks like, the shattering of our barriers and our perceptions of what is safe and what is true. I come back to this story and to this place that I sat with of privilege. What do we do with compassion? Is it just a nice thing that we say in our progressive, sweet worship services in good UCC churches on Sunday morning? Is it a way that we post things on Facebook and we talk about just the right things in just the right ways? What I have observed from the aftermath of the violence of this summer, from the Orlando shootings, from the shootings of individuals that we have witnessed, and of the police shootings in Dallas, is that compassion comes in a way that breaks down privilege, in a way that breaks down power, in a way that breaks down all of the labels. And when we have compassion for one another, when we are no longer looking at the other as the other, then we are able to truly begin to live into and listen to what is God's beloved community. How are we called to be, to live, and to embody God's beloved community? My friends, in this world, in this day, in our communities, in Memphis, Tennessee, in Arkansas, in rural Missouri, and in urban Missouri, what we are called to do and be is not to feel guilty when some of us have privilege and power. It is to give it away, to make sure that those among us and within us who have no power, have voice, have the ability to speak and protest for themselves. Ours is to protest the power, the systems of power that continue to, in stealth ways and in overt ways, keep us subjugated rather than united. And ours is to have compassion, to love in such a whole and full way that we are indeed loving the Holy One in our midst as we embody beloved community. These are my thoughts, and these are my hopes, and this is the vision that I bring back from the places of Germany and the places of Poland where there has been struggle of privilege in ways that we understand, in ways that are unique to their culture. But nothing is unique because we are human. So my prayer this day for the Missouri Mid-South Conference is that we may hold each other as we follow the ways of Jesus, our rabbi and teacher, our spiritual leader and guide, who shows us the power and privilege, even power and privilege, cannot overcome the love of God as we are called to embody this love of beloved community. In the holy name that unites us all, thank you, this day and forevermore.